I kicked off the month of June with my very first ever visit to Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois. This was my very first experience at a Six Flags park, and over the course of 2 days, I was able to experience all 15 coasters in their very well-rounded coaster collection, thanks to the help of short lines and efficient ride-ups. And when I got back, I thought it would be fun to rank these coasters based on my experience in each of them. Welcome to Ejector Airtime, and these are the coasters of Six Flags Great America ranked. A quick disclaimer before we get started. These are all based on my own opinions and my personal experience. And also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe as that'll really help against the YouTube algorithm. Bringing up the rear at number 15 is Little Dipper. Built by Philadelphia Toboggan Company, this junior wooden coaster actually has some history to it. Originally opening in 1950, it operated at Kittyland until its closure in 2009. Great America bid on it and rebuilt it here for younger riders to get their first coaster experience in 2010. While it may be exhilarating for some of the smaller riders, it just didn't do much for me. But it was still fun to be able to get a credit like this, since at some parks you either have to be a kid or have a kid with you in order to ride a coaster this size. At number 14 is Sprocket Rockets, a Vekoma Junior coaster that's been operating at the park since 1998. Unlike Little Dipper, this coaster had a few surprises. Aside from giving a great view of Goliath while waiting at the station, this one also had a few sharp turns and a helix that both drew some solid positive Gs. It even had some mild floater airtime in places. Much like Little Dipper, this ride offers a great first thrill for young riders. Coming in at number 13 is Joker. This is one of several SNS 40 free spin coasters in the Six Flags chain, and one of 4 called Joker. I had previously experienced the smaller free spin model in the form of the new Dragon Slayer at Adventureland in Iowa, so I already knew what to expect going into this slightly longer version. I frequently compared these coasters to what you might experience on a zipper ride at a county fair. There's a lot of rocking back and forth, and flipping depending on the weight distribution and good timing. No ride on this ride is going to be twice the same, and it's definitely not a bad one. It's just a very solid filler coaster for the park. At number 12, I have American Eagle. Opening in 1981, this was the very first major coaster designed by Intamin, and it also had the longest drop and fastest speed on a wooden coaster at the time. The fact that this is a racing coaster also helped to add to that thrill. Unfortunately, only one side was open for me, so I didn't get to experience the racing aspect, and while the floater airtime wasn't bad in some places, the helix at the far end really jackhammered me into the side of the train. I don't typically mind roughness on an older wooden coaster, and this one definitely had plenty of redeeming qualities, but in a park with so many other solid rides, it just couldn't quite crack my top 10. At number 11, I have Demon. This era looper opened with the park in 1976 and has actually seen a few major changes since then. Originally opening with a double corkscrew and the name Turn of the Century, 2 vertical loops were added in 1980, and it was given the Demon theme, which included a new paint scheme, tunnels, and rock work. I went into this one with low expectations, as old aero loopers are notorious for being pretty rough, and while this one definitely had a few bad transitions, most notably the drop leading into the final tunnel and the corkscrews, I ended up enjoying this one more than I expected. Maybe riding it somewhat defensively helped me avoid a lot of the potential head banging on the restraint. Starting off the top 10 is Dark Knight. This is a Wild Mouse coaster built by Mock Rides and is themed to the iconic Batman movie of the same name. Being an indoor coaster that was mostly in the dark, this one had more than a few surprises, including a well-themed queue, plenty of theming throughout the ride, and a number of surprise turns and drops. It may be a Wild Mouse, but definitely don't sleep on this one. Coming in at number 9, I put Whizzer. Also opening the same year as the park, this is the only Schwarzkopf speed racer left operating in America. This makes it a very rare credit for anyone who wants to ride this classic family coaster. With open trains and nothing holding you in but a seatbelt, this offers a surprisingly thrilling experience, as it makes great use of the terrain and through the trees. I actually saw one rider reach over and touch the hillside as we flew by, but I definitely don't recommend trying to put your hands up on this one. I ended up getting thrown into the side of the car on a sharp turn, but I still highly recommend checking this one out. At number 8 is Viper. This is a mirror image of the classic Coney Island Cyclone in New York. While I have yet to experience the original Cyclone, Viper is definitely worth a ride, as this thing not only has good pacing, but great airtime as well. I got several moments of well-sustained floater airtime that at the end made me want to jump right back in line. Both days that I was at the park, Viper was also a walk-on, so it makes getting re-rides very easy. I highly recommend riding it in the back if you want to get the best airtime possible. At number 7 is Flash Vertical Velocity. Originally called V2 Vertical Velocity, this Intamin Impulse coaster was just recently themed to the Flash. This is one of 2 launch coasters in the park, as well as the only shuttle coaster. My favorite thing about this ride is how the ride ops would try and fake you out just before they launch you away at 70 miles an hour. I recommend waiting for the front row on this one for the full experience. Going forward, you get the feeling that you might fly off, seeing how close you get to the tip of the spike, and going backwards, you're left hanging over the water for a moment. It may may not be the longest, but these impulse coasters still offer a really thrilling experience. Number 6 is the first of 4 B&Ms in the park, the Wing Coaster X-Flight. This was my first experience on a wing coaster, and going into this one, I had heard that these are sometimes considered to be forceless, but I would highly disagree with that when it comes to X-Flight. It may not be as tall and fast as some of the others out there, but it definitely has a few intense moments. The front row on the left side of the train, in my opinion, is the best spot to experience this coaster. You get the full effect of that wing over first drop, and of course the near-miss experience flying through the tower is one of the most incredible moments I've ever experienced on any coaster. Starting off my top 5 is Max Force. This is the newest coaster in the park, an S&S air-powered launch coaster, and this has the fastest acceleration of any coaster in America. Launching you from 0 to 78 miles per hour in only 1.8 seconds, this coaster is a real punch in the gut. I was only able to experience this coaster once, as lines were long all day, and they only had one train operating, with the other one being down for maintenance. With a ride time of only about 20 seconds and 5 inversions in that period of time, it is a perfect example of short but sweet. Needless to say, this is a coaster that definitely left me wanting more, but it is still a launch that's worth experiencing. If you go to the park at Rope Drop, I highly recommend riding early in the day in order to avoid the longer lines later on. At number 4, I have Batman the Ride. Opening in 1992, this was the very first B&M inverted coaster, and while this coaster may be pushing 30, it still holds up. I haven't been on many inverts yet, but Batman is definitely the most intense I've experienced so far. With a height of 100 feet, a top speed of 50 miles per hour, and whipping you through 5 inversions over less than 3,000 feet of track, this coaster definitely proves that size isn't everything. I love the way this coaster whips you through the corkscrews and the zero-G roll. It is a true classic and definitely worth experiencing. Coming in at number 3 is Superman Ultimate Flight, a flying coaster built by B&M. This park visit was full of a lot of firsts for me, as well as a lot of surprises, but I think the biggest surprise of all was ending the first day with my very first ride on a flying coaster. The experience on this coaster was unlike anything I had experienced up to that point, and the pretzel loop had to be one of the most intense elements I've ever experienced on a coaster. At the bottom of that loop, the force in my chest was quite strong, and I actually got a little bit of gray out from it. With that, I can't even imagine how much more intense that will be the day I experienced Tatsu at Magic Mountain. I ended both days at the park with Superman, and definitely makes me wish that more parks would add these coasters, as it is an experience unlike anything else. At number 2, I have Goliath. Now this is a ranking that may surprise some, and honestly, the only thing keeping this amazing RMC from taking the number 1 spot is the duration. I wish they could have found a way to make this coaster just a little bit longer, but I know I'm not the only person who thinks that. Nonetheless, Goliath is just another great example of how incredible RMC is. An amazing first drop, great inversions, and plenty of amazing eject to airtime, all on one of the smoothest wooden coasters out there. If you can get a ride in the front row on this one, definitely go for it, as it gives the full effect of this ride. And finally, at number 1 is Raging Bull. Before this trip, I had never experienced a B&M hypercoaster before, and while I'm sure that others will end up ranking higher than this one on my favorites list, this one has definitely made me a fan. I rode this one in the last row, as many had recommended, and you need to experience it in the last row to get the full experience. The airtime you get while being pulled off that drop really makes you feel as if you're going to be launched across the park. But the excitement doesn't end there. In addition to being a long ride, Raging Bull features a number of other exciting airtime moments, and the figure 8 section near the end offers some great positive Gs. It offers the full package, and that's why it takes my number 1 spot. That's going to do it for this countdown. If you've been to Great America, be sure to let me know in the comments how you would rank these coasters. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more in the future.